Hello, diplomats. I hope you're all doing good and finding yourself safe in times of a global pandemic. So, in this video today, we are going to discuss India-Nepal relationship and why it is again in news. One immediate one first reason why Nepal and India relationship again is back in news is because the claim that Nepal is trying to make that Kalapani territorial dispute, the Lipulekh Limpiyadura region of Pithodgarh is being claimed by Nepal, and Nepal also not just claiming it, but it's also depicting it that these places are parts of its territory and also have already updated their cartographic maps. So this is a rough background of why India-Nepal relationship is again in news. So even so, the very fact that we have something in current affairs and how to link those current affairs with the traditional syllabus often sounds very tricky. But however, the entire demystifying GS2 course in the column of Edwipla, you're going to understand one thing very clearly, that the current affair issues that you see constantly in the newspapers are not something new. They keep on happening again and again. But however, linking the present day issues and news with the already existing the traditional syllabus is something that we are trying to do through this endeavor. So in that process, every video that we come out with have the importance of why it's in news, and we are backlinking that with the traditional syllabus that we have, so that you can just not just have a grip over current affairs, but you also develop a larger holistic understanding of that issue with the present news. So having said that, I also said that why Nepal is in news. So now we know why Nepal is in news. Now let's understand what are the issues related with Nepal. India-Nepal bilateral relationship is guided by certain principles, certain problems, and also how we can make it better. So rebooting ties with Nepal is something that is in news right now. So how do we reboot? First of all, even to reboot the relationship, what exactly are the issues and why Nepal is important. So first we are going to discuss why Nepal as a country is important. Two, we will see what are the problems with India-Nepal bilateral relationship. And three, we are going to discuss what is the role of China in Nepal and how it is affecting the relationship between India and Nepal. And finally, how we can cooperate and coordinate and also collaborate with Nepal in a much more sustainable manner, so that there will be very few issues coming up again in the future. So now, first Nepal. So what about Nepal? As we all know, Nepal is our neighboring country. India and Nepal share an open international border of 1700 kilometers. And this open international border has been delimited by a principle called the Sugali Treaty of 1816. So back then, the Nepal and the British Raj have signed this agreement, and the border has been still guided by that. Now, what is Nepal? What exactly is happening in Nepal? What is the polity, economy, and the consequences in Nepal? Nepal was an absolute monarchy from 1960 to 1990. Later, there was an interim constitution. It was abolished. It was a constitutional monarchy until 2008. Apart from this, in 2015, Nepal adopted a new constitution. This is something an important achievement of Nepal in 2015 is the constitution making process of Nepal is a long drawn process, and there were many stakeholders involved in it. In fact, India also had a huge role to play in constitution making process, where many eminent scholars, academicians and experts on constitution from India were part of the drafting committee of Nepalese constitution. This is a double-edged sword now. So Nepal, India has a huge influence on Nepalese politics. This has a conundrum. Now, what is a conundrum? Is on the one hand, India is trying to help and extend its support in Nepal. On the other hand, India is being blamed, India is being accused of its big brother attitude and also micromanaging of issues in Nepal. So, to what extent which conundrum works is a matter of analysis that we are going to do in the later part of the video. Next, apart from this, India from a Hindu monarchy has become a republic secular state. That's a very important transition that Nepal has gone through. And the relationship between Nepal, according to Professor S.D. Muni, he's an expert on he's an expert on international relations, especially specifically to South Asia. He said The relationship between India and Nepal is, quote unquote, is this: we are into each other in historical, cultural, traditional, and linguistic roots. This very sentence sums up the entire intent of this video. So SD Muni says this is in line how the India and Nepal have engaged over a period of time. Relationship is also based on a shared sense of emotions, shared sense of culture, history, and language. That's one thing. And other important thing is it's a relationship of heart and marriage. UP and Bihar are continuous geographical spaces, a geographical region with Nepal. So people in those places are very emotionally attached with people of Nepal, and there's also continuous there are also marriage relationship that happens between the people in that particular region. And apart from this, most importantly in India-Nepal relationship is India and Nepal have signed a friendship treaty in 1950, and in international relations and world politics, and especially in bilateral relationships, your commitment, your words of action are always guided by treaties, conventions, which are most often very binding and forthcoming documents. So in this case, India and Nepal have signed a friendship treaty in 1950, and this was signed against the backdrop of impending Chinese advances, impending Chinese invasion of Tibet in that particular region after immediately communists took over in 1949. So in order to keep a check, India has ambitiously and in a highly committed manner signed this treaty in 1950. Apart from this, there are, according to Ministry of External Affairs report, there are more than 6 million Nepalese who are in India working in various sectors and working in various forms. So that shows the importance of Nepalese people in India, and it also calls for huge amounts of cooperation with that particular country. And apart from this, so in international relations, after having a brief background, we roughly try to categorize. It's not a rough it's not a tight compartmentalization, but however, it will help for us in theoretical understanding for better retention is we try to see it in subheadings. So the first subheading that I would want to discuss about Nepal is the strategic one. This, how is it strategic important? Nepal is strategically important to India because it lies in our immediate neighborhood. It has an open international border with India. And three, it is a strategic buffer between two aspiring superpowers. One is India and China. So it is between India and China. So that means that every balancing act that Nepal is trying to do will affect both China and also India, and also this triad, this strategic triad. The triad means Nepal, India, and China. So in that case, the strategic importance of Nepal is huge for India. And second is that Chinese influence is very, very high on Nepal. Post economic blockade in 2015 that India had on Nepal, Nepal has, is having a strategic tilt towards China. So this strategic tilt has been taken advantage by China, and they are helping in infrastructure projects, laying roads, putting railway links, and also helping in various other projects in terms of financial assistance. So apart from all this, we also have another important other important socio-economic issue is socio-economic development of bordering states of Nepal is in India's interest. So it's all the more important why Nepal and India should have a stable and sustainable relationship. Apart from that, there are many rivers that flow from Nepal to India. So hydro diplomacy is something that we all want to focus. So in international relations, and when you're writing questions and answering in your mails, and also in trying to understand, it's very important that you play utmost importance to the vocabulary that we use. So we can't randomly write about water cooperation or water resource cooperation. We could write hydro diplomacy. So India and Nepal have huge scope for hydro diplomacy, considering shared water resources that India and Nepal has. Apart from this, we've already discussed that we have a socio-cultural importance and historical ties with India and Nepal. And Nepal has been a land of Buddhism, and Buddha was born here, and we clearly know what kind of influence that Buddhism has on people of Nepal and also in India. So there's also a religious harmony connotation involved with India and Nepal. Having said this, now what are the problems? The problems between India and Nepal Like I've mentioned in the starting of the video, the first thing that is in news is about the territorial dispute. So, India, these particular areas of Kalapani, Lipulekh, Limpiyadura are in Pithodgarh district and they are part and parcel of India's territorial integrity. There is no compromise on that. However, Nepal is claiming that it is part of their territory. That's why the issue is in news and that's why we are reading India and Nepal. Apart from this, we also have other issues. We have had Doklam standoff at the Tri Junction. So, even in the Doklam standoff, Nepal took actually a equidistant role. In fact, it maintained equal proximity. As a country with whom we have historical closeness and with whom we have historical cooperation, India was expecting that Nepal would support India. But however, very cleverly and very strategically, Nepal was maintaining a strategic distance. In fact, if you want to put it in other language, it was maintaining principal distance from both the countries as a strategic buffer. And apart from that, we said we have an open border. When we have an open border, that means opposite of tight border. So the regulation is very low. People are coming. Goods and services are free flowing very easily. Hence, there could be scope for some issues like counterfeit currency, trafficking of arms and drugs, human trafficking, and also encouraging many fundamentalist religious groups and activities. It might be an internal security threat and it might be an internal security aspect for India. And apart from this, the Maoist insurgency can also be a huge problem for India. And apart from this, Nepal's constant power politics and constant strategic blackmailing that it does, that it can get closer to China, is also an issue of concern. Apart from this, China constantly accuses India of big brother attitude and also calls every act of India as hegemonistic. That is a huge problem. India has helped in establishing constitutional stability and also bringing in a new constitution. However, Nepal perceives it with a sense of huge mistrust and lack of faith. That is definitely a problem. And Nepal, of late, is also trying to delay the projects that India is trying to do in Nepal. And apart from all this, we clearly understood the political developments that we are having, because the Madesi issue is very close to India. The Terai region people who are contiguously are close in geographically with Nepal, they have a problem in terms of in terms of getting equal rights and in terms of getting equal representation with the hilly region people of Nepal. Now, like I said about the strategic buffer role of Nepal, the most important factor in India-Nepal relationship is also China. If in the coming videos to come, in the coming videos, we were going to discuss various aspects of international relations with many countries, especially South Asian countries. We have this impending Chinese factor, which is going to be a huge factor in studying them. Similarly, the Chinese factor is also an important factor in Nepal and China, in understanding Nepal and India. How? China's constant interference in Nepal has been brushed in the name of infrastructural development. So, China is trying to strategically pull away Nepal from India by its investments, by its debt trap diplomacy. Debt trap is you give debt, you do infrastructure development, you lay roads, you lay railways, you construct other projects, you develop the region, and hence you make that particular country dependent on you. So this is a new age, if you want to call it, this is a new age colonialism. It's called neo-colonialism, if you want to put it in that way. So in that case, China is trying to completely have a grip over Nepalese politics, and it is trying to push away India's strategic gains with Nepal. Hence, Chinese factor in Nepal is an important thing. When you're writing an answer about India-Nepal relationship, Chinese factor becomes one of the crucial points in trying to understand the larger dynamics with India and Nepal. Similar way, they have signed many transit agreements. We can call it transit diplomacy. Nepal is becoming part of Belt and Road Initiative of China. Nepal is actually allowing and giving access of its territory to China for its security purposes, and also Nepal is trying to have a very good relationship for terms of transit of its goods and services and in terms of import and exports with China. This becomes a problem because 98% of Nepalese goods and services comes from India and goes through India. So in this case, interference of China is a huge factor. Apart from this, we have something called 2+1 format. It's a dialogue proposed by China. What China says is this is different from a trilateral mechanism. China and India can jointly conduct a dialogue with a third regional country. That is, it is not specifically Nepal, but it could be any other country and apply to South Asia. So this is a proposal as which China has come up. So it's called 2+1 format. It could also be a prelims question possibly. 2+1 format recently is in news, is related to what? You can write India and China. If the option is given Nepal and not any other South Asian country, then that could be also a correct option. So now we have understood the larger dynamics of Chinese influence over Nepal, Nepal's accusations of India, and why India rebooting ties with Nepal is important. This is an important aspect of this video. So in trying to understand bilateral relationship, the first we do is we understand what is the situation in that particular country, socio-economic, political situation in that country. Second, we understand what are the developments that India has done with that particular country, and later what are the problems with that particular country, and later how we can cooperate. So UPSC expects this fundamental thing from aspirants and people who want to become the future bureaucrats is that particular aspirant who's wanting to join bureaucracy has to have a very comprehensive understanding of issues. What are the problems? What have we done? And what are the possibilities? So UPSC India is expecting people who have wishful thinking, who comes up with multiple options, who have positive outlook towards things so that change can be made possible. So hope is possible. So in that case, way forward of your bilateral relationship with most of the countries becomes crucial with substantial examples. Not the typical generic rhetorical way of answering, but with good examples. In that case, now we will discuss way forward. How do we improve? So the first and fundamental thing that comes to us right now, you see, it's a monsoon season, floods are everywhere, people are getting stuck, there's huge flow of rivers, lakes, and all possible water bodies, and people are getting stuck and they're having huge problem. So the fundamental thing that should come to your mind is about climate change and environmental governance. So India and Nepal have huge potential to cooperate together in environmental governance and establish sustainable rules of environmental preservation. One example, Himalayan region is a continuous region between India and Nepal, and there are many waters flowing from Nepal to India. That means the climate issue, environmental issue becomes a huge factor in India and Nepal cooperation. Alternative apart from economic, cultural ties, they're going to be the obvious points of cooperation with any country. But apart from that, you should have a creative imagination of cooperation. You should have a creative imagination of how to build ties in a better way. In that case, the first thing that you could think of is environmental governance. Second part is, you have to remember this very carefully, that maintaining good relationship with that particular country is not just only a matter of goodwill. It's not just a matter of having less conflict, but it is in India's own interest to secure its own neighborhood. India's strategic importance being a big player and an active, responsible democratic power in South Asian region and aspiring to be a global superpower comes with the way we conduct ourselves in our immediate neighborhood. So maintaining good relationship is not only good for Nepal, but it's in huge interest of India too. And three, whatever we do, there's a difference between paternalizing attitude and persuasion attitude. So India being accused of its big brother attitude with Nepal, India has to mend its ways and try to come up with innovative ways of engagement in a more persuasive manner than interfering manner. 3. India and Nepal has to push for electricity trade. See, two countries can prosper when we are trying to economically look at relationships in a way it benefits both the countries. I already said about hydro diplomacy. Hydro diplomacy has huge potential because of the inherent water flow and the dams that we have Arun electricity project with Nepal and many other projects. In this case, we can have a huge hydro power potential which can be harnessed and exported. And through this new imagination, what we are trying to do is we are trying to find a new equilibrium in sustaining the relationship. And next, what else do we need? Power generation, irrigation, flood control, are most, and in terms of what providing drinking water access to the regions that are involved in this particular uh, space will play a huge potential for developing the relationship. Another important thing is we have BB Iron Corridor, SARC, SESEC, and larger South Asian development. So the narrative of integrated view of region, the narrative of collaborative development, cooperative development can only happen when you make Nepal an active member and a very very meaningful member in India's diplomatic journey. So hence this is all the more important in terms of cooperating on this regional forums. And other important thing is India should stop thinking to trying to bring Nepal into its under influence. Rather than thinking in an influence, trying to bring it in a strategic influence, India has to look for more strategic cooperation. That is something that's very crucial. And apart from this, we also have discussed about transit diplomacy, which is important. And most importantly, the joint statement released by both the prime ministers clearly mentioned that equality, mutual trust, and respect and benefit is something that India and Nepal relationship are trying to restore, are trying to aspire for. And most importantly, the relationship between India and Nepal have to guided by not strategic competence but strategic cooperation, not in terms of fearing a strategic tilt towards China, but having a strategic collaborative attempt in having a very integrated view of region. Because of geographically landlocked nature of India and Nepal having a better relationship is not only good for these two countries but will be in the larger interest of the entire community in South Asian region. So this is roughly the way forward for India and Nepal. If we have any doubts on this, you can let us know, and we'll try to cover up and address those issues in coming videos.